Wherever you may be joining us from, good day. My name is Chidi, Anselm, Odinkalu, and I seek leave of the chairperson this morning, General Martin Luther Way, one of our most distinguished men of the services, to welcome you to this year's edition of the House of Justice Summit. Um, I can also thank the government of Kaduna State who have made this possible, who have helped to tamp down the situation in the state in order to make it possible for us to meet here today. Let me apologize. I'd hoped to be able to join this encounter today in person. Unfortunately, because of factors that the organizers know very well, it's not been possible to make it, and I'm taking this opportunity therefore to apologize to all of us for missing this year. But I hope that we'll all be around next year, God willing. I'll be able to join all of us in person. Our theme this year is self-evident. We meet at a time when the challenges of security, of justice, and orientation have never been deeper in our history. As we meet here, not too far away from here, a new manifestation of our insecurity challenges has thrown itself up further to this part of the country around Sokoto, with the emergence of an externality called Lakurawa, which has joined in what is clearly a multidimensional assault on our coexistence as a country. Every geopolitical zone in the country at the moment is assailed by manifestations of insecurity. The notional claim of our country, of the state, to a monopoly of the instrumentality of violence is challenged. The national state claim of the state to a monopoly of fiscal measures is challenged. And the national claim of the state to a monopoly of legitimate dispute resolution is also challenged. All that is to say that everywhere in the country, insecurity is a problem. And the challenge of insecurity is tied to our evolution as a country. 140 years ago, indeed to this day, in Berlin, Germany, 15 major powers of the world were meeting to divide up our continent. It's what is known in the history lessons as the Berlin West Africa Conference. And at the end of that conference, our continent was parceled up across and between several European powers. Indeed, 7 of them took up territories across our continent. What resulted, or what followed, was the most brutal assault on a people ever recorded, probably in history. And if you come to our territory, Nigeria, the colonial occupation, or what was called colonial pacification, was accompanied by tremendous violence. And this violence is captured in several locations. Ijebode 1892, Akasa 1895, Benin 1897, Ibinu Babi with the Aros in the southeast in 1902, followed in 1903 by the toppling of Sultan Atahiru in Sokoto, and then Battle of Burmi, which followed thereafter near Funakai in what is now Gombe State, in which Sultan Atahiru was killed and his son Mohammed Bello and family exiled to become the ancestors of Sudan's current-day Falatas. And you have Satiru massacre in 1906, the Lagos water riots in 1907. I could go on. What is the point I am making? Following all of these massacres, the idea was that our people were non-persons, and that notion of our people as non-persons has survived in the aftermath of the colonial encounter. And the idea at the heart of our crisis, of our multiple crises in Nigeria, of national orientation, of justice, and of coexistence and insecurity, is essentially that our people are non-persons. Non-persons during the colonial era and non-persons today to our politicians. And that is really the idea that we've got to fix, because if we don't fix it, this issue is going to have to continue. Fixing the idea of the Nigerian as a non-person begins with creating a shared sense of citizenship, a shared sense of civics. That is why this encounter is important, beginning with civics, beginning with the idea that the average Nigerian actually has got to matter. It begins with elections. It begins with courts in which judges do justice and not do transactions. It begins with deploying our uniformed services under codes of conduct and codes that make it possible for them to respect Nigerians. All of that takes leadership, and leadership that is legitimate. Because when leadership is not legitimate, it does not count the people, because the people do not count, and the votes of the people will not count towards establishing leadership. These are the things we've got to address as a people. Number one, legitimate leadership. Number two, legitimate institutions of both administration and of administration of justice. And number three, institutions that are capable, institutions that are able to do the things that they are established by law to do. When we do not do that, it becomes quite difficult for us to construct the foundations for coexistence, for security, for justice, and for coherent national orientation. In addition to all of this, we also need to begin to work on coherent national narratives, to have a curriculum that teaches our children that being Nigerian is important, but also to have leadership that demonstrates to our children and to ourselves that being Nigerian matters. Because our crisis of insecurity is not just a crisis of physical insecurity. It's not just it's also a crisis of coexistence between communities. And it's a crisis of the legitimate authority of the state, reestablishing the legitimate authority of the state. It's a crisis of economic capability, and it's a crisis of social cohesion. All of those require, at the end of the day, leadership that can demonstrate that it cares for communities that may well be different to nevertheless coexist in peace. Leadership for whom it matters what happens to its people. Leadership for whom it matters what happens to citizens. Leadership for whom it matters that citizenship exists and counts for something. That being Nigerian is important and counts for something. And that is leadership that will lead by example. It's not leadership that invests in itself when citizens are suffering, nor is it leadership that invests in propaganda when the reality is different. That is a different kind of leadership, ladies and gentlemen, from what we have seen until now. And I want to end, because this is a conversation among citizens. I'd like to end by inviting all of us to be honest with ourselves in acknowledging our problems, honest with ourselves in acknowledging our challenges, but hopeful in the future that when and if we're able to do so, we can create a common narrative that enables us to navigate all of those issues together, address our past challenges and our past difficulties, acknowledge them, confront our present with a sense of can do, and look to our future with the idea that it is possible to construct a different kind of country in which all of us matter, all of our communities are important, and our leaders come with legitimacy derived from ourselves. I wish us all of us a fantastic and wonderful set of exchanges, and I look forward to being here next year to another event even bigger and better than this. May Nigeria prevail. Thank you.